All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Townsend with Tracker Products. I've got 2 o'clock on the nose in the East Coast time zone. So we're going to go ahead and get this started here today. Welcome to I see our title says weekly webinar. We've not been doing these weekly, but there's multiple different webinars that are going on that are fairly routine that I want to make sure everybody's aware of it. First and foremost, if you are not a member of the evidence management group on Facebook, this past week we just passed 600 members in that group. So if you are running an evidence room, working in an evidence room, have anything to do with evidence, this is a fantastic group to be a part of. I am amazed at some of the posts that are put inside there. Maybe not so much the posts, but the number of responses that are continually posted. There's really good questions are going in and really good answers are coming out. So if you have a problem, something you're trying to work through, maybe even you're looking for just a template document that you need, I'm seeing people going in there and posting those questions and other people responding to them and sharing all sorts of information about things that they're dealing with. So I would highly recommend go to facebook.com/groups/evidence management, and you can become a part of that. The next thing I want to tell you about is the Evidence Management Institute webinar. So I have this webinar and we cover, between the two of us, but Sean Henderson, who does the evidence management webinar, we cover a variety of topics that are out there. So make sure you go over to evidencemanagement.com /free-training, and you can sign up for his webinar. Also, by the way, these webinars are always posted in that Facebook group, so you can also keep up with what's going on inside of there. So make sure you sign up for that and get those in there at the same time. Now, as we get started here today, I want to do something we haven't done before. I want to start out with some poll questions because we've been doing this a lot now. We've got a lot of people showing up here today. And to be honest with you, I sort of thought, maybe we wouldn't get a big attendance because we're focusing on a leadership discussion here today. So I want to start out and just ask some poll questions and find out a little bit more about the crowd that is out there. Now, these are not tied to you as an individual user, so I'd appreciate it if you would respond to these and let me know where you stand in this whole thing. Maybe you just saw this topic and you're like, hey, I'd like to check it out, but you have nothing to do with evidence. So the first question is, do you run or work in an evidence room? Yes, you're a supervisor. Yes, you're a technician, or no, you're in another position. And most people have already responded. It looks like 90% of the people that are on this call here today are in an evidence room. 40% are supervisors, half work in an evidence room. So good. We've got 80-something% of the entire audience has voted. So I'm going to close that out. Thank you for that answer. We've got a couple more questions I'm going to run in here. The next one, so we specifically geared this today toward our leadership discussion. So we're not talking about guns, drugs, and monies. We're talking about leadership. And so I'm just interested, why are you here? Do you want to learn more about leadership? Did the topic, pique your interest? Or are you just showing up because you saw a webinar and you thought, man, this would be really cool to come to this today? So all right, we're getting numbers rolling again, and it looks like almost 70% of our population has voted, and 75% of you are saying, yep, I show up for leadership. The others are, nope, I just show up at these things. So maybe we should market Amazon gift cards, and we'll see if we get more people show up, and we'll see who's just showing up for Amazon gift cards. All right, so 3/4 of you here to learn more about leadership. A couple of more. I'm just interested, how many of you work in a police department or you work in something else? So that's a simple one there. Yes, you work for a police department. Nope, you're working somewhere else. All right, so almost 80% of our crowd has voted, and 80% of you work for a police department. 20% are outside of a police department. So good, we're seeing people outside of the police world. Next one is, how many years experience do you have within your type of position? So just curious, how many of you are less than 5 years, 5 to 20 years, and how many more experienced folks do we have on here that have over 20 years of experience doing whatever it is you're doing? So looks like half of you are in the 5 to 20 year range. 30% of you are less than 5 years, and 20% have more than 20 years. Okay, good. Last question. Okay, this is the last one I'll hit you with, and that is, my evidence operation is running well. Yes, maybe, or no? I'm just curious. All right, so 60%, now 70, 80% of you have voted, and 60% of you say yes, 25% say maybe, and 12 of you say no. All righty. Thank you very much for doing those polls, guys. It sort of lets me know a little bit more about the audience that is out there, and the people that we serve. I love doing these webinars. I really do. The only thing that I wish would change is that I got more feedback from people that would say, hey, these are the topics I'd really love you to cover. Because usually when I put out a call and say, hey, will you guys, give me some feedback, I usually don't get any response at all. But people keep coming, so we'll keep coming up with topics. By the end of this webinar, I'll let you know what our next topic is. So a few weeks from now, we'll get into what is our next topic, and we'll cover that at the end. So with no further ado, let's dig into developing the leader within you. And for those of you that have been to one of my leadership webinars before, my guess is those of you that are here today, this is not your first one. We have 3 or 4 of these that I have already done, and they're all posted on our YouTube channel. Max, who is with Tracker, who's listening, would you get me the URL to our YouTube channel? I want to put that in the chat window so that if you've not heard the different leadership series that we've done, or if you just want to see one of the other webinars in general, we'll put that YouTube channel out there so that you'll know where to get those at. So Max, if you wouldn't mind putting that together, I'd appreciate it. But specifically developing the leader within you, it is a book by John Maxwell. It's a rather old book at this point. I think it's written 20 something years ago. This book has had an unbelievable influence in my life. I read it about 7 years ago, where I mean, clearly I'm in a position of leadership as the CEO of a company, but you guys may be very aware that just because you're in leadership does not mean that you're very good at it, and does not mean that you are advancing your skills, doesn't mean that you really know anything about leadership at all, because many times in leadership, you have very poor leadership. And I hope the people that are here today that are listening to this webinar, you care to advance your leadership skills. And so that's why we do these webinars. I believe as passionately about this topic as I do training you on anything to go in the evidence room, because I believe if there's one thing in your evidence room that you should increase or advance or make better, if it came down to your leadership versus evidence management software, or your leadership versus a new drug incinerator, and I'm bringing up all sorts of different things, I believe the most significant thing you can improve in your evidence room is your leadership. As you advance your leadership, you will advance your evidence operation to a great degree. And I believe that is even more true if there are multiple people working in the evidence room, or if you're in a supervisor position. And again, I'm speaking from experience. I don't think I was being a very good CEO many years ago. I think that I've learned a lot over the years, and I'm developing it myself. And just in case you are not aware, you never attain leadership. It is always a process. It is always a journey that you're going through. So today, hopefully for many of you, it is simply another step in the journey, okay? So chapter 1 in his book, and like I said, I believe this may be the fourth or fifth topic that we've covered on leadership. This is chapter 1 in his book, Influence. And he says that for influence, he describes influence in your organization. Excuse me, I gotta get my page up. Is the definition of leadership is influence. All right. So as we get into what is influence, the dictionary definition is the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. And when I talk about influence, if I were to ask you, well, what is your opinion of influence? That was probably that's a little better written out than what I would have expected when it comes to influence. Certainly, you think about influence as having impact on another person, but when you think about having an impact on their character or their development or their behavior, those are much bigger words than I just communicate with somebody and I have an impact on their daily life. I mean, when you can impact somebody's character or their behavior, those become really, really important things. One of a parable or a phrase that he uses in his book is, "He who thinketh he leadeth and hath no one following him is only taking a walk." And I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, that is true. If you're in, and you can be in leadership, I don't know if you know this or not, you can be in leadership and nobody is following you. In fact, as we get to the back end of the discussion here today, we're going to go through some of the different levels of leadership. And level one is the definition of it is you're in a position. You've been assigned a position. People have been told you are the supervisor of fill in the blank of whatever it is. That does not mean you're in leadership. That does not mean you're very good at it. And if nobody is following you, you're just taking a walk. You're all on your own. Okay. Leadership is the ability to obtain followers. Okay. At its core meaning, you do not have leadership if you do not have at least one follower. If somebody's not, coming behind you and falling in, you are simply on your own, and that is not leadership. Okay, so your ability to go back to the definition, your ability to influence others, to build character, to develop them, to improve their behavior and have an impact on their behavior, that's what begins to get followers coming along. Okay, most people define leadership as the ability to achieve a position, a rank, or title, and upon their arrival, think they have become a leader. Now, I want to step lightly in what I'm about to say, because in reality, in the world of law enforcement, in the world of federal government, this statement right here is as true in that world as any other type of arena out there. Because most people, and it's just the way that it works, most people obtain a position or a rank or a title simply based on one character, and that is the amount of time served. You do not have to have any other qualifications. You don't have to be good at it. Sometimes no questions are asked. You've simply obtained 20 years. You're tossed in a position of supervisor. Let's go with that. But that does not mean you're very good at what you do. And so the other thing that I see a lot is that there is no leadership training. I mean, there's on the job training. These are the things that need to be done, but very little leadership training is taking place. And so I'm thrilled for the people that are here today that even give an iota care about what the heck we're talking about here, because I honestly believe, as I said a little bit ago, your ability to progress in your leadership will have the singular largest impact on your organization, more than anything else you do. Your improvement in leadership is going to have that level of impact. Okay, everyone influences someone. Okay, so you may be sitting here thinking, well, I'm working in the evidence room. I don't influence anybody. In fact, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to that. I've got some quotes that I found that sort of explain how broad influence is. And if you can get in the mindset that you are an influence every day in your life. As a matter of fact, I heard there was a former Navy SEAL. If you ever watch YouTube and you listen to any of like those motivational speeches, there's a former Navy SEAL. He's a lieutenant commander. He's really high up in the ranks. And he gave a commencement ceremony a couple of years ago where he talked about your level of influence in life. And he said, if there were 8,000 people in the room, and he said, if each person in this room influenced just 10 people, and then those 10 people influenced 10 more people, by the time you got to the 8th iteration of that, those 8,000 people impacting all those people would have affected 8 billion people. That's everybody on planet Earth. Okay, No one can understand the mysterious thing we call influence, yet every one of us continually exerts influence either to heal, to bless, to leave marks of beauty, or to wound, to hurt, to poison, to stain others' lives. Now, those are really big, heavy words, and they're in two different directions. And when you think about your ability to influence somebody else, because in a minute I'm going to bring up your children. So my guess is most of the people on here have children. At the very least, you are in influence in their lives. And then it moves out from there. People in your work, people in your church, people in your whatever club you're in, you have influences that are all over. Do you think intentionally about your ability to either heal or bless or leave marks of beauty? Or do you wound and hurt and poison and stain others' lives? I would submit to you that if you don't consciously think about that, you may be unknowingly, in fact, I would even possibly argue that your ability to positively influence somebody to heal, bless, or leave marks of beauty, you have to intentionally do that. Okay, you don't just sort of step your way into that. In fact, I would imagine if you can think of somebody in your mind out there, just think of somebody that you think, man, they've had such an impact on my life. They have literally blessed my life, or they have really healed me in a certain way. I'll bet if you went and asked them, are you intentional about that, or does that just sort of come by nature to you? I'll bet you anything that they have been in some environment where they have learned that, they have excelled at that. They go about doing that intentfully. And so the opposite of that is, and it's very easy to unintentfully wound or hurt or poison. And for me, I think about things I've said to my kids, and that's sort of where it's like, ouch, sometimes that hurts when you think about your ability to wound your child. The fact is, you have that influence, you have that ability to do that. And there is no doubt, everybody that's on this phone, on this call here today, you have said something to hurt or wound somebody else. And most likely it was unintentionally done. Now, if you're just a jerk and you go about intentfully wounding people, my guess is you're not going to be on this call to begin with. You probably don't care about leadership, whatever. But that's why it's so important to think about your ability to influence somebody else. And here's a little poem that he put in the book to really bring home your ability to influence somebody. If somehow you think I don't influence somebody, here's a poem that he put in the book. A careful man I want to be, a little fellow follows me. I do not dare to go astray for fear he'll go the self same way. I cannot once escape his eyes wherever he sees me do, he tries. Like me, he says he's going to be the little chap who follows me. He thinks that I'm so very fine, believes in every word of mine. The base is in me, he must not see the little chap who follows me. I must remember as I go through summer sun and winter snow, I'm building for years to be the little chap who follows me. Now, my guess is many of you, as you've heard that, and if you're thinking about your kids, you're probably crawling under your desk right about now. Like me, we're all subject to that because the reality is, your kids see everything that goes on and they're probably following. So, a topic I don't want to dig into is politics. But how many of you have kids that have your same political views? The reality is all of you, because you have that kind of influence over your kids. And so my goal here is not to have you think solely about your kids, but to think about the influence you have on the other people in your office, the ability to bless, build up, make them better, or tear them down. And that can so, as a matter of fact, the first part of that where you build people up and help them and bless them, that is done over a long, sustained period of time, and you build that up over time. But the idea of tearing down and tearing apart and wounding somebody, that happens in an instant. I mean, in a fraction of an instant, that thing can take place and you wound somebody, and it takes a lot of years to rebuild that on the other end. My point to all that being, do you specifically consider that and how you go about influencing other people? So now think about a school, and I really liked this one. I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, a child humanized or dehumanized. Again, really big, heavy words being used here. I would suggest to you that in an evidence room, you have influence and impact on people that show up to pick up evidence every day. You can take most of those words and you have the ability to make their lives miserable, or you can bring some joy into their day. That happens in every walk of life. Do you consider that when somebody comes in to visit? Do you consider it when the boss shows up? Do you consider it in all of those little interactions that you might consider, hey, I don't even care about that. They've got a job to do, I got a job to do, go about doing your job. And I think a larger point that I'm trying to make is as you have all those tiny little reactions or those interactions with, you fill in the blank of who it is, if you consider every one of them as an ability to influence for better, you begin to build your leadership over a period of time. Those people want to interact with you. People don't fall in line behind you. In fact, when we dig into the different levels of leadership here in a moment, people don't fall into line because you've been given a title. They simply don't. That will never go any further than what the dictated title is. You must do this. But if you want people to follow and do it enjoyably, when you begin to progress as a leader, they more apt fall in line with that. They want to do that. They want to help you because you're helping them. You know, they want to be around you because you make their day more joyous, not more miserable. Okay. As the follower cannot tell what becomes of its fragrance, I'm sorry, as a flower. As the flower cannot tell what becomes of its fragrance, neither can we tell what becomes of our influence. And that's that again. Every day you have influence, you don't know what that's going to look like over a period of time. Are you building people up, tearing them down? Leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about the one life influencing another. I love that quote. Let me read that again. Leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about one life influencing another. Now, let me share a little bit about myself. If I go back 20 something years ago when I'm young, you know, I'm a young person still, and I'm just starting my own company and I'm learning these things. I was given, I merged with another company. This was 20 something years ago, and I was the vice president of whatever it was. I thought I had achieved everything. I thought this title is going to bring me everything that I want. People are just going to listen. I had to learn really hard lessons about leadership is not a title or a position. And I thought that for quite a period of time. So don't knock yourself if that's where you're at. Okay. If you're sitting here and it's like, man, I got this title, people are just going to follow me. Just realize that's not true. And then you can begin to move more toward an arena where you begin to build your influence in some of these other leadership topics. And over time, people will begin to follow because they want to be there, not because they have to be there. All right. So John Maxwell in his book, he talks about 5 different levels of leadership, okay? And largely, if you are in leadership at all, you're going to progress through these 5 levels, or you may hit one of them and you just stop, okay? Some people don't want anything to do with leadership, but you're, to some degree, you are in leadership one way or another, okay? So I want to run through these. I want to run through these and just read a couple of things that he says in his book here. And we've talked about the first level of leadership, which is position. It is title. You've been given a rank, okay? So I want to read you what he says, and this is not good, by the way, this thing I'm about to read. This is the very basic entry level of leadership. It's the first rung. The only influence you have is that which comes with a title. People who stay at this level get into territorial rights, protocol, tradition, and organizational charts. Now, if I just stop right there for 1 minute and ask you to think of somebody in your department, what I just described, people who stay at this level get into territorial rights, protocol, tradition, organizational charts. You guys absolutely know that person. You're getting a vivid picture of what they're like in your mind right now. These things are not negative unless they become the basis for authority and influence, but they are a poor substitute for leadership skills. Okay? So you got to understand that level one. That is where everybody is going to first move into leadership into that level. The goal is to not stay at that level. If you do stay at that level, then you become the organizational charts and the tradition. In fact, if somebody questions your authority, you're going to be Johnny on the spot with whipping out the organizational chart and letting them know, hey, Buster, look at my title. I'm chief whatever it is. And, and maybe you've done that before. That's level one leadership right there, positional. Level two is permission, is what he titles a permission level of leadership. Okay. Fred Smith, I don't know who Fred Smith is, but a guy that's in this book, leadership is getting people to work for you when they are not obligated. That will only happen when you climb to the second level of influence. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Leadership begins with the heart, not the head. Now, in the front of my book, I've written some of the most impactful quotes that I came across in this book, and that right there is quite possibly one of the most important quotes in this entire book. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Leadership begins with the heart, not the head. Okay? So if your leadership is it's all brain, it's all influenced by level of thinking, and I'm trying to work things out like that. That is not what is going to propel you into the higher levels of leadership. In fact, if you guys can get that mental image of somebody in your world that is a really important leader in your life. In fact, when we get into level 5, you'll know more what I mean by level 5. There is no doubt that that person cares about people. There is no doubt that person wants to see people do better. You might believe also or have seen where that person will put you ahead of them. That is level 5 leadership we're going to get into in a minute. So at level 2, you begin to move with your heart instead of your head. You begin to care about people. How they progress becomes way more important to you. Another quote that is in this section right here that talks about permission level leadership is people who are unable to build solid, lasting relationships will soon discover that they are unable to sustain long, effective leadership. Oh, that's so true. And it's the hardest thing because if you think about it, for us, it's really hard to deal with other people. I mean, because people come with problems and people come with attitudes and all sorts of things. And it's like, you want to believe, is there some way to progress through this where I don't have to deal with people? And that's not true. You don't progress like people. Again, we go back to what is leadership? Getting followers, getting people. You do not propel up through this without heart over head, without, showing people you care more about them for yourself. And so that becomes what keeps you at level 1 because you cannot get that heart aspect of it. You cannot care more about other people than yourself. Maybe you're an evidence room supervisor and the thought of helping somebody learn to where maybe they're better than you someday, maybe they're making more money than you, maybe they take your position someday. You may be like, man, there is no way I'm going to go out of my way to help that person. They can figure it out. Nobody helped me out. That right there is thinking more with your head. It's not thinking with your heart. Okay. Level 3 is production level. All right. So now you're starting to think more with your heart. You're starting to care more about people than yourself. Now we get into a production level. And as he says here, this is where things really begin to happen. Good things, profit increases, morale is high, turnover is low, needs are being met, goals are being realized. Accompanying this growth is momentum. Leadership and influencing others is fun. Problems are solved with minimal effort. Fresh statistics are shared on a regular basis with the people who undergird the growth of the organization. Everyone is results oriented. In fact, results are the main reason for the activity. Imagine that for just a minute, the things that I just imagine your organization, your evidence room, like people are happy about being there. You have problems and they're resolved unbelievably quick. For some of you, you're like, man, I've been dealing with one problem for 20 years and I cannot get this thing resolved. You start but again, and he cautions you in this book, this may be one word that I would say, you cannot skip one of these levels. You cannot go to 1 and then go to 3, 4, or 5. You must progress through all 5 of them. You will not get to level 5 with going through 1, 2, 3, and 4. You have to go through those things. All right. So again, there's no skipping the heart. There's no getting away from people. There's no going around them. You have to deal with people, and you have to do it in a very different way too. So level 3, we get into production. Now we get into level 4, which is people development. Now the heart's in place, the production's occurring. Now this is where you really care about developing your people. You want them to go beyond you. How do you spot a leader? According to Robert Townsend, they come in all sizes, shapes, and conditions. Some are poor administrators, while some are not overly bright, but there is a clue. Since some people are mediocre, the true leader can be recognized because somehow his people constantly demonstrate superior performances. A leader is great not because of his or her power, but because of his or her ability to empower others. Success without a successor is failure. A worker's main responsibility is developing others to do the work. You get into this level, and now all of a sudden you're sitting down and you're working with your people, and you're sending them off for training. You want them to progress. You want them to do better. You may even say, hey, you do better at this than I do. When your people are working like that and they believe you care more about them than yourself, oh my goodness, now your leadership is really propelling into the stratospheres. And then level 5, the last level of leadership, and I'm telling you, this is a diamond in the rough. If I were to ask you out loud to think about people in your world that are bad at leadership, they're bad at what they do, you don't like to deal with them, you probably could come up with 20 examples without a lot of thought. I'm talking the whole of your life. Okay, you can come up with 20 people that are you just don't want to deal with them. They're bad. But then if I ask you to think of a true leader, and I mean, I'm talking like all 5 of those levels have been in place. They genuinely care. Like you might even suggest, I couldn't possibly care about people like they do. They're so kind and they're so courteous in what they do. As a matter of fact, if they deliver bad news to me, like they do it in such a way that I feel good about it. And maybe you can't, but that type of person that is that, and I've got somebody like that in my life, but like it's 1 or 2 people. I don't have a long list of people that are in those upper echelons where like, man, if they called me up and asked me to go to war for them, I'm going to do it. Like they don't even have to explain to me why I'm doing it. It's just like, if they're making a request, I know that their intent is pure. They've got my best interest at heart. They wouldn't ask me to do it if they weren't willing to do it themselves. And all of a sudden now, that's level 5 leadership personhood. Most people will not attain that level. In fact, go ask that person that that's at that level, and they would probably convince you that they were not at that level, that they've still got a lot of work to do, and that's exactly it. There's humility there that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Oh man, level 5, the humility that takes place at level 5, that is what really propels people up into that. I don't know if I can ever achieve that level. I really don't. I want to be able to do that. When I read some of the aspects of what is that type of person, I don't know if I can ever achieve that level. But I'm going to work hard every day. I believe I'm doing that within my company. I'm trying to help the people progress. I'm honest. I think that I'm doing a lot of that. All right, so the last thing I'll throw out before we wrap this up here today is I found this little chart that takes the word influence or influencer and breaks out every level or every letter into a different type of trait of that person. And so as I read through these, I want you to see if you can pick out what seems to be the common characteristic amongst them all. So for an influencer operates with integrity with people, nurtures people, faith in people, listens to people, understands people. You start to get the key word here, enlarges people, navigates for people, connects with people, empowers others, and reproduces other influencers. As I said multiple times throughout this whole presentation, you cannot move into larger levels of leadership, higher levels, more prominent levels, whatever the word is, without dealing with other people. The people is the common connector here. So are you nurturing them? Do you have faith in people? Do you listen to them? Do you understand them? And all the things that go along with this. The more of these that are taking place for you in your life, Your kids also, I'm sure you're a better influence when you're with your kids, when you sit down and listen to them. When it's just yes, no, they're a lot less likely to sit down and talk with you and nurture them, So we know that to be true. Whether we're doing that or not is really important. Okay, I don't see. Let me see if I got any questions that came in. Let me see here. A couple questions were posted. So Hannah said she'd like to listen to this again. Hannah, as a matter of fact, let me just put the YouTube channel out here. So inside the chat window of the webinar, in fact, Max, why don't we, for everybody that's on this webinar, I think we have their email addresses. Let's go ahead and email everybody this YouTube link. I did just put it in the chat window. So if you'll go to the chat window, you'll see the link to our YouTube channel. Probably, Hannah, within the next hour, we'll have this posted in the YouTube channel, and we'll also put it in the evidence management Facebook group. So make sure you're in that also, Hannah, because we'll post them in there. All right, last thing I want to toss out is simply our next webinar. So in a couple of, I don't even know when we're going to do the next one, but we're going to discuss how to move your evidence room. So hopefully you don't deal with this very often, but what is the proper procedures and things that need to take place if you're moving your evidence room? I'm talking about from one physical location to another, or maybe it's within the same building, but you're moving it to one room over another. So in that next topic, we're going to cover all the aspects of what you should be doing during that process. What are the goals and objectives? And so we'll go over that. Everyone, thank you for showing up to the webinar today. I hope this was good for everybody. We'll have all this posted out on the YouTube channel in a minute. Thank you for your time, and everybody have a great day. Goodbye.